Well, Mel's blind life. I want to take this time to just, first of all, thank you so much for joining me on a Thursday afternoon down under over there in Australia. Thanks so much for joining me. Um, for one thing, I just have to say, I really appreciate you joining me so quickly. You don't know me at all. I usually don't ask this question at first, but have you ever heard of Aaron's Opinion? Have you had a chance to go over any of my content?
I hadn't really actually heard of your channel. I think when I first started working with Victor Gourbea over at Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway, he
Indeed.
did mention that you wanted to do an interview with me.
Okay.
And then I hadn't really chased it up. And then when you messaged me, I was like, yes, I should check this guy's content out and
Sure,
everything.
sure.
So I've had a
Well,
brief look over and
sure, Mel. Well,
yeah.
let me just introduce my because it can be very sudden and very confusing. All these podcasters all over the world. Well, my name's Aaron Richmond. I'm 30 years old. I'm an American guy living in the universe, and I was born with glaucoma, along with a congenital heart defect. And my academics are in international affairs. I'm a teacher by trade and a podcaster and content creator any other time of the day. I was listening to podcasts in the blindness community, and I felt that they just were not open enough to having guests. So I created Aaron's Opinion so that everyone around the world, whether you're in Australia or whatever country you're in, can come up here and share your story of your life, blindness, whatever you want to talk about. So that's basically the roots of how I developed Aaron's Opinion. And along the way, I've been interviewed by Victor Gouveia and interviewed Victor Gouveia. So he's a great friend whose blind life is that anyway. I'm crediting them for introducing Mel's blind life to me. So thank you. So Mel, usually the question I start off with, but I felt that that was actually a very appropriate introduction given the circumstances. But
Mm.
anyway, who is Mel? How did you become blind? And who is Mel's blind life?
So Mel is a nearly 28, be 28 next February, year old woman from Australia. Um, Mel is a teacher also by trade. I've got my certificate 3 in education support, and I'm currently attending university online doing my Bachelor of Education, looking at majoring in secondary education, teaching probably English and legal studies or something like that. Um, I also I have my finger in a lot of pies. I'm also a YouTube content creator, and most of my YouTube stuff that I do across on Mel's Blind Life is really about my life as someone who is blind. I do stuff with my guide dog Penelope. Before that, I did videos upon my guide dog Darcy, who is no longer with us anymore. I do videos about my horse Maggie and how I look after her as a blind person, and about how I travel and look after my home and everything like that. So that's really Mel and Mel's blind life. And then as for my vision loss, I have a condition called rod cone dystrophy, which is a genetic condition, which is also degenerative. So my maternal grandmother, my mother, my mum's younger sister, so my aunt, and myself all have rod cone dystrophy. We were all born with low vision. Um, Mine was, when it was most functional when I was a child, was probably about 5% of normal vision. And then basically once we hit sort of puberty time, is when the big drop in vision begins to occur. And so I have been totally blind now since I can't really put my finger on an exact sort of time because it happens so slowly, but I've probably been totally blind now for probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years maybe. Um, and so my mother is also totally blind, and my father is vision impaired, but he has a different um, vision loss condition. He's got a corneal dystrophy. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I loved that adorable Australian expression that you used. My finger is in many pies. That's adorable. Up over around here. Up over we say, I wear many hats, or we say I have many sticks in the fire. But apparently in Australia you just have to stick your finger in pies. Apparently.
Yeah. Well, we like meat pies down here.
I
They're a
love that
thing.
expression. That's adorable. My finger is in the pie. Oh, that's adorable. But
Yes, I
that's a
do
great
speak very
expression.
Australian.
You're
I
welcome to
do.
speak. Oh, I love hearing, your beautiful Australian English. Definitely. Sure, sure. So, and also too, I'm a huge guide dog supporter, because I also had a guide dog named Nani, who also passed away in 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge, huge supporter of blind people having guide dogs from, reputable organizations and things like
Mm.
that. So yeah, so what made you what made you want to get into guide dogs? I think that's a really important topic.
So for me, getting a guide dog was basically the next step up the ladder. Really, it's sort of like all my sighted peers, used to ride their bikes to school and then they got their driver's license and they could drive a car. So for me, learning to use a cane when I needed to when I was about 14 was like getting my learner's license, and getting my guide dog when I was nearly 19 was sort of like the next step up the ladder, and getting my own car. So my mother and my auntie both had guide dogs while I was growing up. We had so I was exposed to guide dogs right from the beginning. There's photographs. Some of the earliest photographs of me are me when I was about 4 or 5 months old, sitting on the mat with mum's dog at the time. And then, when I was about 18 months old, mum got a new dog and I used to chase the dog around the room at the guide dog school when I used to go in and visit. So really for me, guide dog mobility was the next step. I saw how it assisted my aunt and my mum to do the things that they want to do. We live in a country town, and with her dog, mum used to travel down to the city for work every day when I was growing up. It was a 12-hour day for her. She used to leave home at 7 o'clock in the morning and not get to work until 9 o'clock in the morning. And then she'd leave work at 5 and not be home until about 7 in the evening. So, it was just the next step really for me. I always wanted it. And I was very lucky to get a guide dog literally as soon as I finished school. So like I said, it was just the next step, and it was what I always wanted, really.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, what can you tell me about the guide dog schools in Australia? And more importantly, what can you tell me about, the Australian culture around guide dogs and things like that? How do they approach that?
So, first of all, we have two sort of major guide dog schools in Australia. We have Guide Dogs Australia, which have sort of campuses in New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia and Queensland. And then we have Seeing Eye Dogs Australia, who are mainly, I think, in Victoria and Queensland. There is other guide dog organisations such as Guide Dogs Tasmania and Guide Dogs Western Australia, but Guide Dogs Australia and Seeing Eye Dogs are the two main ones. I personally get my services from Guide Dogs Victoria, who are part of the Guide Dogs Australia body. So down here we use sort of a mixture of positive reinforcement, new school and old school training methods, really. As for the sort of attitude towards guide dogs, I think it's quite the same as everywhere, really. You get your people who know nothing and who try and grab the dog and lead it, so because they think that's going to help you find your way. We have people who refuse, at restaurants and taxis. We have
Mm-hmm.
refusals. We have people who are really great and who see the dog working, and parents with their children saying, oh, that's a guide dog and it's helping the lady and we don't touch it. And so we're really, like anywhere else, we really have quite a diverse kind of attitude to guide dogs. I think from the blindness community perspective, I think there's quite a lot of guide dog handlers that you know they have their dogs and they use them to achieve what they want to achieve. There are some people who feel as though they wouldn't be able to achieve what they do without a dog. There are people like me who, like I said before, it was just sort of the next natural step, and I could do it without a dog, but I choose not to. And yeah, so it's really quite a diverse attitude, I think, to guide dogs in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds like the attitude in the United States too. We
Yeah.
have schools all over the country, but you're right though. Guide dog discrimination is still an ongoing issue,
Mm,
and I and I think that in my opinion, I don't think that it's being appropriately addressed. I don't think enough people are speaking up appropriately
mm,
to solve the problem. So I it's a problem that we need to solve together all over the world.
mm,
But until enough people speak up appropriately, it will just continue to kind of just always a problem that sort of hovers around. But
mm.
yeah, and then okay, good, good. And so now tell me more about your interest in education.
Um, yeah, I don't know really. Like I sort of always, like all through school, I said I was going to be a teacher. Especially through high school when I met some really great, I had some really great teachers, especially in high school, and some teachers' aides who were absolutely fantastic and who sort of let me, really helped me with my education and stuff. And I think, I don't know, I just sort of naturally just slipped into it, and I did my certificate at TAFE. I don't know what the American equivalent to that would be. It's like, it's not university, but it's like your after school study sort of thing. I don't know what you would call it over there, but it's, your tertiary qualification. So I did that and I got a job. I was working at a school which has since shut down, for blind and vision impaired kids. And I really loved that. I then, I went on to try and develop a business in a regional town teaching Braille and assistive technology, which didn't quite work out. And now I'm back volunteering at a program for blind and vision impaired children who are in mainstream schools, but they come to our program because our program is basically, well, it's called Support Skills, and our program is basically helping the vision impaired students who are in mainstream education settings with their blind skills. So, with their use of assistive technology, with reading Braille, and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I just sort of naturally, slipped into it, and I really love it. I really enjoy it.
That's so good. That's so good. So how would you describe the way that the schools and the education system is set up in Australia? In other words, what is the Australian philosophy behind education, and then how does that apply and affect to blind children in the school system in Australia?
Um, I don't really know about the Australian philosophy as such. But with our blind and vision impaired students, we just want them to be able to keep up, and we just want them to be able to, to be as successful as they can, and we're really dedicated, especially in the program that I work at, um, to making sure that our kids can keep up. The education system, tries to have, teach kids to be critical thinkers, to be able to work as a group or as an individual, and to really just be able to sort of take the next step when it comes to sort of university or whatever they want to do, and make them capable of doing that. And that's what we do with our program. So we have, not only do we have our program for children between year 4 and year 10, but we also have people called visiting teachers, and they are teachers who are skilled in the vision impaired and blind kind of arena, and they go to a student school maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks or something like that, and they help the school and the student with accessibility and their education. So, one of the things that a visiting teacher might do is go and talk to the teachers who are teaching that blind student and say, have you got any problems teaching something, say in mathematics, or just trying to make sure that that the teachers can make things as accessible as they can. So we have that. We also have access to specialist equipment, such as laptops with screen readers and stuff like that we can send out to the kids. So yeah, we really try quite hard to make sure that our vision impaired students can keep up with their sighted peers.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. So
Mm.
in Australia right now, do you think what percentage of these visually impaired students are attending university? What do you think?
Um, I don't actually know the numbers.
Okay.
I don't know. Um, I think like out of my sort of direct friendship group, um, I think probably maybe half of my friends have gone to either university or TAFE and done tertiary education. Maybe even more than half. I would say out of my friendship group, I would say probably, yeah, about 2/3 of them have gone to tertiary education, but employment itself is quite low
Mm-hmm.
for blind people. I think at the moment it's only 30% of people who are blind or have low vision are employed, um, even if they've been through tertiary education.
Yeah, yeah. That's how it is here in the States too. That's a little frustrating. I was hoping, I guess I got my hopes up. I was hoping that Australia would have better, that you would say that there were more, it was easier to be employed there, but maybe not. Apparently not.
No.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but that's how it is in the States too. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's really sad. Like, I've only technically had one paid job in my life, and that was at the school which no longer exists. Um, and I was only hired on a casual basis, and I probably only got paid for about 3 hours worth of work every week. So, all of my other work that I'm doing at the support skills program at the moment and everything else, apart from the sort of one or two clients I had while I was trying to do my technology and braille training business, everything else that I've done has been unpaid work, because people just, I don't know whether it's that they don't have the budget to pay, or whether they don't want, like, don't have the resources, or whether they need someone who's got more experienced. I don't know. But yeah, it's really hard to um, to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really not good because it affects, blind people's self-esteem. And I
Mm,
see so many frustrated posts all over the blindness community that this, for many, this unemployment thing, it really has an effect on the psyche of those who are blind. It really affects the entire blind population, I think.
yeah, it does. And look,
Right.
we're lucky in Australia because we have the disability pension, the disability support
Mm-hmm.
pension. So we blind people can apply for that and go on to that when you're 16. And you know, it's not it's not a lot of money, but it's certainly um, better than nothing. And so we're lucky because we've got that sort of to fall back on. But yeah, we certainly um, need to have jobs as
Without
well.
doubt, without doubt. And we also have the same problem in the States too. We have, it's not called pension, it's called Social Security, but we also have that.
Mm.
And now we have a big problem because a lot of people get onto that system and then they won't work and then they refuse to work, or then there's people that are on it that can work, and then a lot of people take advantage of that system. So that system is very problematic in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. Yeah. Do you think there's people in Australia that take advantage of the pension?
Um, I don't think so because I don't think there isn't enough money in the pension to take advantage of it.
I
If that
guess.
makes sense.
Yes, it does. It
So
does. Mm-hmm.
for someone like myself who's unemployed, and it's only a certain amount of money a fortnight, and you've got to make it work. So you can't really afford to take advantage of it because then you'd be broke. And I've been there, so yeah, I know what that's like.
Right, 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 right. So then, what was your motivation and inspiration really to get into YouTube?
um, so I probably about 2015, 14. I was really into Tommy Edison, and some other big YouTubers who back then I really enjoyed watching. Um, and all of them were in North America. And I was like, come on, guys, someone's got to fly the Aussie flag here. And so I decided to do that myself, and to fly the Aussie flag myself. But it took me probably until 2018. In 2015, when I decided to do it, I recorded a whole heap of videos, but I just never published them. And then yeah, in 2018, I thought, right, I'm gonna do this, and I started up the channel. My first videos are appalling. They're really not very good, but yeah, I've sort of been growing it since early 2018. I've got 530 subscribers now, which isn't quite as big as I was hoping it would be by now, but yeah, it's really good. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Oh.
YouTube takes a while to catch on. And
Mm.
but what you have to do is just be consistent and produce content that you take ownership of and people secretly notice over a period of time.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it's very difficult on YouTube to get noticed. I think that everybody is YouTubing. Everybody has a YouTube. So,
Yes.
it's very, very
Yes.
competitive. So, I mean, have you guested or collabed with just other Australian YouTubers in general? Like, not necessarily blind ones, but just have you collaborated with any of the other Australian
Um,
content creators?
yeah, none that are really huge. I have a friend who I went to school with, and she for a little while was doing a mummy vlog, mummy and house, that sort of family vloggy type thing. And she actually got up to, I can't be sure, but about 1,100 maybe subscribers. And so we did a collab on her channel, probably about, goodness me, it would have been probably at least 3 years ago. It was just when I was starting. I've got another friend who has a channel that's smaller than mine, and her and I go on, we've been on a cruise together, and we spend a bit of time together. So we've done a couple of videos together, but I haven't done a lot of collabs, mainly because they're hard to organize, and with the thing that's been going around, it's hard to get out and see people and stuff. But I've got some ideas for some collaborations that I want to do with some people in the future. So hopefully that'll work out, and I'll be able to start growing.
Sure, sure. And you've mentioned travel before. So I've traveled all over the world. I've never been to Australia, but I've traveled all over. So where have you traveled to outside of Australia?
So I went on 2 cruises to the South Pacific when I was 9 and 10. I went to the sort of Pacific Islands, and then when I was 19, I went in 2013. I went on a 5-day trip to Tokyo, Japan, for blind tennis, because I was playing tennis at the time. And then I've done 2018 and 2020. I did a couple of 2-week cruises to New Zealand out of Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a little bit, but I haven't. The only time I ever flew anywhere was when I went to Tokyo, and the other 4 cruises were all, from Melbourne coming back to Melbourne, so I didn't have to, fly anywhere for those.
Sure. Yeah, I've been to England. I did a study abroad semester in Norwich. I also speak French. I'm a French speaker, so I've been to France several times.
Mm.
Let's see. I've been to Netherlands, Amsterdam, great place.
Mm.
Germany, Austria, are both very interesting countries, but in those, especially in Austria, they don't really like speaking English, and they don't really speak French, so it's a little hard in
Mm.
Austria. But
Mm.
Poland, Czech Republic, a couple other places around the world, Swaziland, in southern Africa, and I've been to one of the places in the Caribbean too. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think traveling is really important. And the other hobby that you have is blind tennis. And of course, this is something that is not really well known in the States, but I've heard of it. So why don't you tell us more about how you got into blind tennis?
Um, I always really loved tennis. I'm a huge tennis. Um, I'm a huge tennis fan. Uh, I When I was in about year 7, just before I started losing my vision, I started taking tennis lessons with a friend of mine and her dad, who were, who were both tennis players. But it didn't quite work out because I couldn't see the ball. I thought I might have been able to, but I couldn't. So that didn't go too well. And then I was actually at a program, at the support skills program, which I used to be a student of, and now I work at. And in a PE lesson one day, our teacher was like, she had a brochure for blind tennis, because they were just looking at starting, and there was a come and try day. And so I thought, oh, this is going to solve my problem of not being able to see the ball. So I went along to that, and that was at the end of 2009, and I played consistently probably for 3 or 4 years. And then I played on and off for the next sort of 3 years. And then when I moved away 4 years ago, I stopped playing because I was living miles away. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to maybe get back into it next year.
Hmm. So basically, what has been the biggest, the most prestigious blind tennis competition you've competed in? How?
I've
Um,
never competed.
oh, so you've never competed like on the circuit.
No.
You just play in
Yeah.
with friends or around your
Yeah.
community. That's great.
Yeah, because it's such a new thing. When I was playing, they weren't having any competitions. I think they've had a couple since I stopped playing. But yeah, no, we weren't quite up to competing yet when I was playing.
Yeah, because now they definitely have competitions for that. That's so
Mm,
good. Yeah,
mm,
I never really got into sports. My parents just weren't really into it, and I was never one to be inclined in that. But
mm,
I think that the majority of blind people are not playing blind tennis or things like that. So
mm.
that's really important. Yeah, hopefully you
Yeah.
can get back into it and get more games and start to get
Mm,
into uh, maybe start to get a little bit more competitive. But who knows?
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
And you
Yeah, but
mentioned yes.
there's a lot more blind sort of sport here. We have people play goalball, which was actually in the Tokyo Olympics, which is pretty exciting to have a sport specifically for the blind in the Olympics. And of course, being Australian, blind cricket is a big thing. But there's a lot of blind cricket teams all over the country. And we do have a national team who have gone to, England and places. So blind cricket's a big one here as well.
Good. Good, good, good. Yes, cricket for American people is for people who've never heard. It's
Uh,
similar to baseball-ish. I mean, I've played it before. It's sort of like a
it's nothing like baseball.
okay,
The
nothing like
only
baseball.
similarity between baseball is that you have a stick and you hit the ball
Right.
with a
Yeah, there's
stick.
a vague similarity, a vague similarity. But most Americans have never heard of cricket, really. Cricket has
I
never been
didn't
a
think about that. I forgot that most people haven't heard of American
yeah,
cricket.
most people who are not from Australia, Asia, or England, or the British colonies have never really
Mm.
certain sports
Yeah,
are
it's a
only
very British thing,
I mean, certain sports
cricket.
just didn't catch on in certain parts of the world. Cricket's one of them.
Mm.
Um, but yes, how would you explain blind cricket? Mm-hmm.
So so cricket, you have a pitch which is like a long flat surface, and at either end of the long flat surface, which is actually quite a narrow long flat surface, you have a set of stumps at either end, and the stumps are three vertical poles with a horizontal pole above, like along the top, and they are only about I think they're about a meter tall, and then, or maybe less than that, I can't remember exactly. And then you have um, two people, one person at either end with a bat, and a person kneels behind the stumps, and they're called the wicket keeper, and it's their job to sort of catch the ball if it comes to them. And then you have a bowler who runs up the pitch, throws the ball, and the batsman hits the ball. And then there's fielders dotted around everywhere, which is, I guess, a little bit like baseball. And they try and catch the ball when the batsman has hit it. And then the batsman has to run from one end of the pitch to the other while the fielders are catching the ball and sending it back to the bowler, basically. and you
Yeah.
can go out by having the ball caught, and you can be run out by the batsman can be run out by the bowler, the wicket keeper can catch the ball. So yeah, there's different ways that you can get out as well, and you have 11 people on each team, and you have 2 batsmen at a time. In sighted cricket, you throw the ball overarm, so it goes along through the air, from the
Overhand.
bowler to the
Yeah.
batsman. And then in blind cricket, you roll it along, sort of like you would roll how you roll a bowling ball in 10-pin bowling. That's how you would roll a cricket ball down the pitch, so that the blind batsman can hear it coming.
Right. Sure. 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 Sure.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually played it when I was in Lucia, when I was in St.
Mm-hmm.
Lucia in the Caribbean. They play it all over the Caribbean. It's a very popular
Yes.
sport. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. Well, that's good. And then you also play table tennis, right?
Yeah. So I play vision impaired table tennis, which is called Swish. And it is quite similar to normal table tennis. We have our ball rolls along the tabletop. So unlike sighted table tennis, where the net is, down on the tabletop, our net is raised over, so the ball rolls underneath the net, and yeah, we hit it from one end to the other until it rolls off, basically.
I see. I see. So have you competed in blind table tennis?
Yes, I've competed in Swish. I have never won anything. I think once, maybe twice, I've come in the like semi-finals.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've never won anything. I'm not that good. I like just playing for the fun of it. And
Mm-hmm.
if so happens that I end up going in a tournament because they need extra numbers, or because I'm not busy that weekend, I'll go. But yeah, I like just playing for something to do, really.
That's excellent. So good. So good. So now, why do they call it swish?
Be-
That's a great name for a sport, but why do they call it swish?
because we have a wooden bat, and we have a wooden table, and you're supposed to sort of push the bat along the table to hit the ball, and the noise that the bat makes along the tabletop as you're going for the ball is a swish noise.
I see. I see.
Mm.
So yeah, that's a modified version of table tennis.
Yes. Yeah.
Definite. So definitely there's a modification.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So what are your what are your future plans for your channel? Have you thought about getting into podcasting at all?
Um, I think for me the YouTube medium is probably the best,
Mm-hmm.
because if I was podcasting, I'd just sit there and I'd be like, what do I talk about now? But with doing videos, I can show people, and I love doing like vlogging when I go traveling, or, just one of my most popular videos is when I do, guide dog videos. So, like, guide dog adventures to the fruit shop, um, totally blind person traveling on public transport with their guide dog, all of that kind of stuff is sort of my most popular. So that's what I really like doing, is all those sort of guide dog, um, out and about sort of vlogs. So as for what is next with the channel, I don't really know. I don't like making plans. I've just yesterday's video was about crossing roads with a guide dog versus a long cane. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of fun to do. I definitely will be filming over, when I go on trips, places. Next week, I'm going with my mum to we have a sort of like a retirement home for ex racehorses, for champion ex racehorses that have been retired. So I don't know whether you've heard of the Melbourne Cup, which is our big, huge horse race every year. So this place have Melbourne Cup winners there, and we're doing a tour of that next week. And so you get to meet all these racehorses that have won really prestigious races in Australia, and you get to pat them and everything. So I'm going to do a video about that. And I just try and do videos about living independently as someone who is blind, and how I go about that. I have no help with my channel, and I have very little help around the house. I'm living with my parents at the moment for financial reasons. So I try and show that people who are blind or have low vision don't need to, can become independent if they wish to. And so I try and show, some things around the house, what how people can do that kind of stuff, and independent mobility and holidays and stuff like that. So yeah.
Really excellent. Well, if you record your videos, I guess through Zoom, you can just take the audio and then it just turns itself into a podcast. But I do see what you're saying. It can be hard when you're starting out in podcasting to know what you want to talk about and what you want to say. But then once you start having conversations with people, it starts to get easier and easier.
I've just started I've started podcasting with Victor Gorbea on Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? I'm doing a show called Mel's Travel Guide.
Go right. I was just great segue. So yeah, I understand that you syndicate your channel, your show over to Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? So definitely promote the show. How does that work, by the way? And what is Mel's Travel Guide?
So Victor and I meet on StreamYard for me, Tuesday morning, for him, Monday evening. And we do an hour long show. And it's mainly me talking about some of my experiences that I've had with different travel adventures that I've been on. One of the topics I covered this week was I talked about some trips that I went on in 2013. I did a group trip, and then I did an independent trip, and I sort of compared the two and talked about, what worked and what didn't and things like that. So I've been doing that. I think this week was the 5th episode. So I haven't been doing it for very long, but it's been doing really, really well. I've been really enjoying it. Yeah.
So okay. So when Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway is live and they're playing Mel's Travel Guide, so in other words, is that actually happening live? The reason I ask is a lot of times YouTube channels will go live with content that they already recorded and
Yeah,
then make it seem like a live. So when you're on there, is that actually happening live in time?
most of them are live to air. This week's episode is going to have to be a pre-record for Tuesday the 30th, aka Monday the 29th, because I'm going away. But most of the time, this week's was a live. So most of the time they're live.
Okay, well, very good. And so then how did you come across Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? And how did you, make the connection with Victor?
So Victor contacted me a couple of months ago and said, I really like your channel. I do this podcast. I did an episode of, I think he calls it Meet Me, or whatever it is. I can't even remember the name of the show. So I did an episode of that with him, and he obviously really liked it, or me, or both. And he sort of said to me, like, would you be interested in doing a show on my network about travel? And I sort of went, oh yeah, righto, no worries. So yeah, it just sort of happened, really, and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, wonderful, Mel. So good. So then, if you think that sometimes you struggle to find things to talk about, then do you and Victor decide ahead of time what you're going to talk about on the live, or how does that go?
Yeah, I try and come up with a topic for the show sort of a couple of days before the show happens. Obviously, this week I'm going to have to really think about what I'm talking about because we're recording it on Saturday evening, your time. So have to think about what I'm going to talk about, which I've got no idea yet. And then yeah, I come up with a topic for the episode, and it just seems to run so far quite smoothly. And sometimes I'm amazed that I come up with something to talk about for an hour. But it's
Right.
really good. I would struggle to do it completely on my own because Victor puts in, little he'll ask a question or we just have a chat about stuff, and it's really, really cool. I couldn't do it without him because I couldn't just sit there and talk for an hour. I'd sit there and I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd be terrible.
I see. I see. So, what do you think you're going to talk about then this weekend?
This week, I still don't know.
Well, then what
Uh,
I'm getting at is here, then how do you come to figure it out then? If you don't know, how do you figure it out?
oh,
That's
the
what,
idea just comes to me. Usually I just sort of sit back and relax and go, oh well, an idea will appear eventually. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm thinking I might cover cruising this week because I haven't done I did an episode a couple of weeks ago on booking hotels and flights, and I haven't done anything about booking cruises yet. So I'll probably even do that this week. I'm not sure yet. Keep your eye out.
well, okay. Well, that's good. That's really really good. Yeah, and then Victor turns it into a podcast,
Mm,
and then that's shared out. So that's a really great thing that he's doing. I really celebrate that because he gives a lot
mm,
of people a lot of opportunity, and that's really important.
mm.
There's just like you were saying before with the lack of employment and all these different. There's just not enough. The trick is there has to be an expectation to employ people, but then there has to be enough opportunity too. So,
Yeah.
well,
Mm.
Mel, I'm sure that you probably have a ton of questions for me. I would like you to ask, if you want, all of your questions that you have about Aaron Richmond, Aaron's opinion, my philosophy about the universe. Any. I'm an overly open person, as you can tell, being a podcaster. So really dig way deep from the bottom of your heart. What do you want to ask?
No, no. I don't really know. I'm not used to being the interviewee. I'm usually interviewer rather. I'm usually the interviewee. So I
Here,
don't know.
wait, pause. Here, let me tell you a funny story. Okay. So we'll take some coffee. See, it kind of takes practice. It takes practice asking the questions. So, mm-hmm. Oh, coffee
Coffee.
works all the time.
You're
Okay, great.
making me jealous.
Oh, you can drink coffee. I'm not stopping you. But would you believe it if I told you that although I might be a little confused about cricket, I do know what Vegemite is, and I've had it before, and I love it.
Yay!
I
Do you like it?
Yeah,
You
it's
do.
it's so good.
It's
You eat
so
that
good.
stuff. Yeah, I would eat that stuff with a nice cold beer. Obviously, not watching cricket, but watching football or the World Cup or something like that.
Well,
That that. Mm-hmm.
you know that Vegemite is a yeast byproduct of making beer.
Which is why it would probably, in my mind, it would taste so good with beer. So yes.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've never because Vegemite is like a something you put on toast, right? So you
Well,
have that at breakfast time.
so I
So
only I only had it one time when I was much younger. So I only had it one time. Mm-hmm.
mm,
Yes.
so you would have Vegemite on toast,
Mm-hmm.
and you would probably have your morning cup of tea, coffee, whatever with it. I don't know anyone who's had it with beer, but it's certainly worth
Like
trying.
to spread the Vegemite on the crackers and then have like uh yeah, do you know what I mean? How like in this, well, I don't know. In America we have these little biscuit things that we'll eat like
Yeah,
at parties and
yeah.
so I would put Vegemite on crackers and then wash it down with some cold beer. That would be really good.
Yeah, we have these square biscuits and they're called saladas and they're just like big plain pretty
Mm-hmm.
boring things on their own, and I like to put cheese on them because they're about the same size as a slice of, square slice of cheese that you get from the supermarket.
So good. So good.
And so you have a slice of cheese on them, or yeah, you spread Vegemite on them. um so yeah, you can also spread, I know people who spread Vegemite on their wheat bix, which is a bit interesting. I've
And
never done
now
that
what's that?
myself.
That was definitely an Australian word. They spread their Vegemite on their what?
They're wheat bix.
What's that? I don't know that word. What's
So
that?
they are wheat bix are a breakfast cereal,
Ooh, I was
and
afraid of
there's
that. Ooh, no, Vegemite would not go good in cereal. No.
so they're like a wheaty breakfast cereal. I don't know anything that they would be like. They're very nice. Um, and there's this, back to cricket. There's this ad on the television about wheat bix, and it's all the Aussie cricket team is like, how many wheat bix do you do, in the morning? And it's like, oh, I have 9 wheat bix, and oh, I have 8 wheat bix, and so they're probably about the size of a computer mouse. Two wheat bix would be a computer mouse wide and a tiny bit longer than a computer mouse. So I only do 2 myself in the mornings, but yes, they are very nice. A lot of people will have them with sugar, because they're
Ew.
not a very sweet thing. So you would have them, you put milk on them and then you would have them with sugar. What I do is I put milk on them and then I microwave them for 1 minute so they go really warm and soggy, because they're when you get them out of the packet, they're, quite a dry, solid
It's like a
little
biscuit.
thing.
That reminds me of like a breakfast biscuit, like a hard,
Yeah.
crunchy biscuit.
So actually, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a day in the life vlog today, and I actually had wheat bix for breakfast this morning. So if people watch probably the next video that comes out on my channel, you will get to see what wheat bix look like, which obviously, unfortunately, doesn't help my blind viewers, but I hope I hope you guys can understand my terrible description of them. But yes, they're very nice. They're
Mm-hmm.
probably about 2 inches by 3 inches, and
Hmm.
they're about half an inch thick. They're very nice. And you
I
can get
see.
different flavors.
Yeah, it's a breakfast biscuit. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
things similar to that in the States.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have some really interesting food here. We have some very
Yeah,
cool
you
food.
do. You definitely do. Okay, back to you. I'm still counting on you a tiny bit to ask some burning questions because guests always have a lot of great questions for me. So,
I don't. I'm a terrible guest.
oh, that is fine. That is fine.
I mean,
Yes.
I like, nah. I
Yes.
don't have any.
Oh, I thought a question was brewing there for a
Nah,
moment.
nah.
Oh, okay. I see. I see. Does now does Victor know what Vegemite is?
I don't know. We've never had the discussion about Vegemite.
Well, I declare that you must have the discussion about Vegemite. The next time you
We
speak,
should.
you must. The next time you go on to his live stream, don't warn him ahead of time or else he'll do research. Just start talking about it whether he wants you to talk about it or not because I said so. I just want to see what's going to happen. I want
I
to
I should have actually mentioned Vegemite in my last episode, because I was talking about a trip to Japan that I went on, to
Mhm.
the tennis trip, and I while I was in Japan, the guys were teasing me about the fact that I was like, oh, I don't even know what I'm going to have for breakfast in Japan, because at the time, I always had 2 slices of white toast with butter and Vegemite. And I was like, oh, I don't know about what I'm going to have in Japan, because they're not going to have breakfast in Japan. And we got, when they're not going to have Vegemite. And we were invited to the Australian ambassador to Japan's
Wow.
place
Are
for
you,
afternoon tea.
are you kidding
And
me?
no,
That's better
I'm fair
material than
income.
that's better material than any. So you actually met the Australian ambassador to Japan.
Yes. And we had afternoon tea in his formal sort of room, and I got to play his baby grand piano. And
Oh
someone
my God.
told, yeah, and someone told him about my need for Vegemite. And so he walks over to me and he goes, oh, you're Mel, aren't you? I said, yes, sir. And I'm sort of, sir, and everything. He goes,
All
oh,
nervous because you're basically in the ambassador's house of a foreign country. You're in. You're, yes.
exactly. And so I'm like, oh, yes, sir. And he's the highest diplomat I've ever met. And he goes, oh, I've got something for you to have a sniff of. So he he puts this thing under my nose, and I went, oh my God, that is Vegemite. That is so good. And he goes, oh, I heard you might be missing it. So he handed me this big 700-gram jar of Vegemite, the biggest jar you can get. And it was unsealed. It was, it was not unsealed. It was unopened, so it was still sealed. And he also gave me a handful of the little, like in the motel you have those really little tiny sachets of well, I don't know if you do in America, but you have these really little tiny, one slice sachets of butter or whatever. And so he handed me a handful of those of Vegemite, and he's like, there you go, enjoy the rest of it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So
I love it. So I have a
have
huge sense. I have a huge sense of humor, and it's all very humorous to me because I actually studied international affairs and I know what diplomats do. So it's just the irony of, oh, you went over to the diplomat's house. Yeah, I came into his house and all they gave was butter and Vegemite.
yeah. Oh, it
Oh,
was
that's
so funny.
that is the coolest story. That is hysterical.
Yeah,
That
we had a great trip, and I
yeah.
did not open that big jar of Vegemite. I used a couple of my little ones, but I didn't open the big jar of Vegemite, and I ended up bringing it home. And someone actually told me it actually had Japanese writing,
That's
all
cool.
of all of the sort of writing on the jar about the nutritional information and blah blah blah. All of that was actually in Japanese, and I ended up using the jar of Vegemite, but I haven't thrown it away. I washed it out really thoroughly, and it's still sitting in a cardboard box in the garage at the moment. So I've still
Whoa. Okay, okay. So you go over to the ambassador's house in Japan. He gives you butter. He gives you Vegemite. You take it home. You eventually eat it, and all you can do with that jar is put it in your garage.
well, I'm kind of in between houses at the moment, because
Well,
I
I don't know if there's I don't know if there's room for an excuse about that. An ambassador gives you something. You gotta. Oh
well, I don't
God.
have anywhere appropriate to put it here.
Well, hopefully the ambassador's not listening. He might not ever give. I
I
mean,
can't
what if?
even remember the guy's name.
Well, you shouldn't. Okay, don't say that out loud. Gosh. Well, what if there's someone else? What if some other little blind kid shows up at his house? Excuse me, ambassador. Can I have some Vegemite? No, you see, I gave it to some lady named Mel, and she threw the garage. She threw the jar in the garage and forgot my name. No.
Oh
Oh
gosh,
gosh.
it was awesome. It was so funny.
That's a cool story. That's a story that you'll never. That's a story forever. And
Yeah,
now that you're on Aaron's opinion, it's definitely a story forever.
yeah.
Did you tell Victor that story?
No, I
What
didn't.
have you
I
told
haven't.
Victor? It seems like you're very shy. The more I talk to you, I'm getting you to come out of your shell a little bit, but you seem kind of shy, you know?
Well, I mean, I try and be really careful of what I put out there because, especially in the blindness
Yeah.
community, Lord only knows what you're going to say and it's going to come back to bite you. And I
Right.
have had that happen. I have had people,
Okay.
even before I started doing YouTube, I've had people be rude and
Mhm.
sort of,
Mhm.
come and get me for my opinion and
Right,
stuff like
right.
that. So I try and be as authentic as I can, but also as private as I can because I don't want everything out there. I don't
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
that's necessary.
Sure, sure, sure,
And
sure.
yeah,
So, we're actually over time. You did, for someone who was so kind and so great and so private and a little bit shy, you did a magnificent episode. Well, Mel, I would
thank you.
ask you at the end of every episode, you did so well, of course. This is absolutely amazing. And that story, I mean, I can see why you're so private. If I forgot an ambassador's name and put a jar in a garage, I'd forget too. But 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 anyway, we will these types of things. We'll get to the bottom of this story. But of course, if you can ask me only one question to see if I'm really worth my salt as a podcaster, I ask every guest this: what question do you want to ask? Do you still have no questions, or have you managed to have you have has a question popped up out of thin air for you?
No.
Nope.
No.
Do you sing?
I do sing, yes. Yes.
Oh, because every international guest from all over the world, I always give them this choice, and you do not have to, of course. But do you want to end this amazing episode by singing the beautiful Australian national anthem?
Oh, it may be out of key, but I'll give it a go.
So thanks so much, everybody. But before you sing it, if someone wants to connect with you, Mel, or find your channel, how can they do it? Go ahead and explain that.
Yep. Okay, so I am at Mel's Blind Life on Instagram, Mel's Blind Life on Facebook. Also on Facebook and Instagram is Guide Dog Penelope, who is my guide dog. Yes, Facebook and Instagram, Mel's Blind Life, Guide Dog Penelope. YouTube is Mel's Blind Life as well. And all of my links are usually in the description of my videos for my Instagram and my Facebook. I also have a WordPress blog, which I can't remember the URL for, but it's always linked in the description. And of course, my guide dog Penelope, her information is also linked in the description of my videos as well.
Awesome, lovely. Well, click the link in the description. I'll get that information, that link from you later. But of course, thanks so much, Mel. And then why don't you just carry us out of here with your beautiful anthem? Go right ahead.
Australians, oh, let us all rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's stage, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, and let us sing, advance Australia fair.